Sanctuary Podcast. I'm Rob, and I'm here pretty much as always with Kevin.
Hey.
But we are also joined by our good friend, co-worker, the blessing, Andres Ayala III.
Hey.
Hello.
Welcome to the Sanctuary Podcast, friend.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we are super excited to have you, and we just know that people will be blessed hearing your words. And I've been so blessed by our friendship.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk maybe a little bit about that today.
Yeah.
And just, you are such a good friend and such a great leader. And you know how to connect with people on levels that most people can't connect with others on. You do that naturally.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Cool. But first, I want Kevin to recap the message, the amazing message you gave this past Sunday night. Thank you for that. We needed that. I've gone back and listened to it without exaggeration 4 times.
Wow.
And I was there live Sunday night.
Wow.
That's wild.
Saying this is really impactful. And you just did such a great job giving verbiage to levels of communication and the importance of that.
Yeah.
All 5 levels.
Right.
In a way that I knew that this existed.
Right.
But I didn't have like words to describe it. And anyway, can you just recap that a bit? Recap your heart behind the message. Sure. I mean, I know this was a new series. If you want to even talk about that a little bit, give us a recap.
Yeah, well, one of our core values in Next Gen Ministry here, as Andres is part of that in leading our high school team and being part of that team is it's a relational value that we use the phrase "we get close." That's, I believe that we were created that way. We believe in Scripture that we're called to live that way. All of the one another statements, all of the models of community within the New Testament, we're called to get close.
Yeah.
And so this series, we're diving a little bit deeper into that core value called "We Get Closer," to say and this is a series that was kind of birthed out of Rob, you doing the Love by Design, which was mostly focused on God's design for romantic relationships.
Yep.
And we were like, yeah, but there's this whole level of community and friendships that is so integral in not only in a biblical community, but basically, if you want to have healthy romantic relationships, you need to learn also how to have healthy friendships.
Yeah.
So, but often we don't know how to do that. In a generation that it's the greatest need that we have, but it's the thing that we're least equipped to have. Because of breakdown of relationships. So we started this series talking about basically some practical things on dealing with relational friendship issues in order for us to get close. So we kicked off this series of me talking through using a helpful tool that I didn't design, but it's been so helpful for me to understand others and understand pathways of connection and building trust with people. And so it's from a guy named Gary Smalley, who's a relational expert who's been doing this stuff forever. And it's called the 5 levels of communication. And so I'll just go through it real quick because these levels are all really important. And they are part of a process of having our deepest soul needs met, both in relationship to each other and especially with God, love others. I mean, that's the core of what we're called to do. So this is just a helpful tool of kind of breaking down some levels of communication that are all really important in building connection and trust in developing friendships and so that we can get close because we're created to. So I'll go through them real quick. Ready? So the first one, level 1, is what he calls cliches. I call cliches and pleasantries. This is level 1 with people that, you see all the time, but you have a level 1 conversation like your neighbor. Like, hey, what's up? How's the weather? How's the family? Like, cliche things, that don't take a whole lot of effort, risk, or vulnerability with, but really important. So we were talking about like my wife who's she works in retail, and she greets people as they walk in the store, looks them in the eye and says, hey, how are you? How's your day going? Can I help you at all? I'd love to, and then sometimes she doesn't even ask that because she doesn't want to view them just as a commodity or a consumer or customer, but as a person. So it's starting that way. Cliches are they are level 1, but it's a way of establishing connection. Can I tell you, it's really important because Everyone wants to be valued as a person. No one wants to be treated. Even you go into McDonald's and you're like, how can I help you? You know if they mean it or not. They know if they're not looking at you. Those are important things to establishing connection with people. Does Carrie walk out having like deep and meaningfuls with her customers? Not normally, but it's a way of showing you're a value. God's created you. You carry His value, and so I'm going to honor that by just even in the cliches and pleasantries, connecting. In that way. Second level, and you go back and listen to the message, we dive a little bit deeper into these cliches and pleasantries are the first level.
Yep.
Second level is facts.
Facts.
So it's sharing. So it's like when I'm getting to know Andres, like, Andres, where'd you grow up?
Bridgeport.
And that's a connecting point too, because I was born in Bridgeport. Like, I'm looking for those things, but it's learning facts. Oh, how many siblings do you have? Where'd you go to school?
Right.
Things like that. Those are all facts. I'm sharing those things too.
I got another fact.
What's a
Your
fact?
beard is on point.
Oh, you
Fact.
definitely.
Listen, it's been a long time coming. A lot of work.
Wow. Talk about patience, perseverance. That beard is
Heck yeah.
like Aaron's anointed.
right.
It's because I put oil in it every day.
There we
That's
go,
why.
just like Aaron.
Yeah, that comes from being unified and we get closer. Anyways,
Wow.
so part of that is, by the way, it's really hard to maintain a good beard game in the COVID mask era where
Oh, definitely.
your mask, like, what's it do to your beard?
It just makes a nice little dent in it. It's the worst. I hate it.
You get a little lip curl on the
Right.
bottom, right? Exactly.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Paul Huebner, our middle school director, also has a pretty epic beard, and same thing, like, yeah.
It just gives it a nice flip. Instead of getting a flip up here because I don't have hair, I got a flip down here.
That's good. Yeah, you guys need to carry like a hair straightener for your beard.
Those hurt. I've tried.
Wow. Anyway, so
Nice. Anyways,
factual.
Okay.
Nice
So facts,
beard.
but
Thank
those are that level of conversation is it silly and fun, but it's also a way of making connections.
Right.
In that way. So those are facts. Low level risk, in that way, but it's a way of, especially if you remember what someone says to you.
Right.
So the next time I see Andres, I'm like, oh yeah, Andres grew up in a family with X amount of siblings, or Andres went to Fairfield Prep for high school.
Right.
If he goes, wow, Kevin remembered that fact, that means that to him that relates, I can trust Kevin with facts.
Sure.
Because he remembers them. Now, we all forget stuff. That's okay too. But that's the second level of building relationship and connection with people. Third level, level 3 is where we share opinions, perspectives, and I would add to that beliefs in whatever level. And so at this point, as I share like my view on even seems like surface level, but my opinions on sports.
Sure.
In some circles, that's a big deal. Like,
Right.
hey, let's talk about free agency, or let's talk about salary caps or whatever.
it's a big deal to me.
Exactly. See,
Yeah.
right?
I don't care.
That's right. That's right, because you don't care about sports, right?
Right.
Exactly. So, but that's where you start sharing opinions and perspectives.
Right.
Politics.
Right. But even
religion.
like, are you going to get vaccinated?
Oh,
when are you
ooh,
planning on doing
right.
that? Like, that's an opinion.
Huge
why or why not?
Right.
Why or why not?
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
And you mentioned as well, that's where wall of conflict.
That's right. So
Can arise.
opinions, beliefs, and things. That's where now you've come to, pleasantries, usually pretty, pleasant, right?
Sure.
Facts, it's facts, right?
Right.
In third level, opinions, perspectives, and beliefs. That's where we can have now disagreement. And where that is what Gary Smalley calls the wall of conflict. So now I share a perspective, opinion, or belief that's different from yours.
Sure.
Is New Haven pizza the best pizza in the planet, right?
Well, that's a fact.
Right? Okay,
So-
well,
so
there you
fact
go.
number 2
See?
for that. That's
All
a
right.
fact.
Yeah, but if you grew up in
Some
New
people
York,
would differ, right? And say it's New York.
right?
Well, you have the right to be wrong
Exactly.
in this country.
Wall of
See
conflict.
right there, this is a
Wall of
perfect example,
conflict.
right? Wall of conflict. So, and how you deal with the wall of conflict? Do you honor someone in their disagreement? Do you try to hear them out? Are you a listener? Do you snap back? Some call it people like bite. So if I share a perspective on a political view, if Rob's like, oh, all those people are idiots, who believe what you think, right? He just bit me, and I go, okay, now either it's gonna be fight or flight.
Right.
And most people then at that point go, okay, a wall of conflict. When we came to a conflict, they didn't handle that well. So either at that point, you will either go back to 1s and 2s level of conversation
Sure.
or progress forward. If it handles it well, then go, okay, even if we disagree, I can trust them with certain parts of myself that even in disagreement, we can still walk forward together.
And it's because I can trust that you value my dignity as a human being.
Absolutely.
Right.
Even in disagreement.
Even in disagreement.
Vehement disagreement. Even
Yes.
deep theological disagreement on
Right.
things. How we handle those conflicts. And it doesn't mean we avoid them. That's one way
Yes.
to deal with the wall
Right.
of conflict. That will never get you to the levels of 4s and 5s.
Yeah.
So that's wall of conflict, right? We need to learn how to do that really, really well,
Yeah.
especially in our culture. And in a cancel culture, which basically say we come up to conflict, that means you personally reject me, and therefore I will reject you.
Right.
We're done.
Yeah.
We have peaked at our relationship. Okay, let's keep going. 4s. 4s is about feelings. So I can share my perspectives, opinions, and beliefs. If we can move forward, then I'll start sharing feelings, my feelings on things, and trust you with that level of sharing emotion and being vulnerable with you.
Right.
That's where deeper relationship starts to engage. That's where some of our really soul hungering that God has wired us for to live in harmony and community. We go a little bit deeper, and it is a bigger risk. But we know that relationship is built on trust. Trust only happens in risk.
Right.
And then as we learn how to respond in that way, we can go deeper in relationships. That's 4, sharing feelings. Level 5 is needs. And that's a deeper level of vulnerability. I'm exposing a need within me to you. I'm sharing the deep, and the deepest needs probably is a smaller group of people that you make yourself completely vulnerable to, and sharing your deepest needs with them.
Right.
That's like the intimacy in that level is unbelievably risky, but unbelievably rewarding if it's being done well. And that's where true, deep fellowship, friendship, and harmony takes place. It's what we all long for, but don't know how to get to, especially in our life when we've been in relationship with people, we've never seen it modeled well, we've never had trust built, or we've never learned how to deal with conflict and the wall of conflict really well.
Right.
We either go to the fight or the flight,
Right.
Either attack mode or run mode. And so if we haven't seen that well in our families, in our friendships, in our peer groups, in our churches, then we're left with this deep need for levels 4s and 5s conversations, but we don't know how to get there.
Sure.
And so then our soul is at best isolated, at worst, like dying. And so because we're created for community. So that's the 5 levels of conversation. Go back and listen to the message. So that's it in essence. But this will help shape the rest of our conversation today.
Sure.
Yes. So with that,
Yes.
Andres, give us a little bit of your story, because I mentioned at the beginning of this, hey, you know how to connect with people better than most people I know.
Sure.
Probably, definitely one of the best that I know.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't just happen,
No.
right? So can you tell us, first of all, before we get into like your ability to do 4s and 5s really well,
Sure.
can you tell us about your journey with being able to communicate with others effectively and help them feel seen? Because that's really what you do well, is you help other people feel seen and acknowledged and known.
Right.
And that's what every human being wants. So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. As I've grown up and kind of taken time to look over my life, I'm one of 8 kids. I'm the middle of 8 kids. I have siblings. My oldest brother's 35. My youngest 3 siblings, my mom had triplets to end it
Bless
off.
her.
Right. Are 16. There's a huge age gap. So learning how to communicate with them was really big. But I think even living in this reality where my parents split up when I was really young, I was 3. My dad had kind of, I would say, maybe upper middle class. My mom, lower middle class. So I was constantly in this conflict where mom was receiving food stamps, but dad was going out for steak dinners. So I lived in this world where I experienced so many different variations of life.
Sure.
And I think, man, that taught me in so many different ways how to connect and understand different things, different people. But also, I've talked to the both of you about this. There was a moment when I was around 7 or 8. My dad was a politician growing up.
Yeah, public servant.
Yep. And I remember being at an event with my dad. And I can remember this guy coming up and trying to talk to me. And I wasn't always kind of like social butterfly, loved being around people. I can remember going behind my dad's legs, and they kept asking me questions, and I would not answer. And I remember getting into the car that night, my dad turning around and saying, hey, when people talk to you, you need to respond. You don't have the option to not respond. And part of that was the pressure of being the son of a politician.
Right.
But part of that was a dad saying, hey, here's a life lesson. When people talk, you need to listen and respond accurately to what they're saying. And that changed the entirety of my life. Now I tell my dad, hey, the reason why I can't shut up is because of you. So I'm thankful for that moment, although maybe embarrassing at the time. It just propelled me in a different way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even that level right there is learning how to do ones and twos.
Right.
When someone says, "Hi, Andres, how are you?" You know, as an adult, now there's power plays. It feels like in that, and generation gaps. But learning how to look them in the eye and respond.
Right.
That's learning how to have level ones and twos with people, and that's how you start relationship.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even for me, we've talked about it. Ones and twos are almost at times, hard for me. I don't want ones and twos.
Why?
I love heart connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love listening. I love really hearing a person's heart. Right? Asking how the weather is. What does that mean to me? I mean, it's raining outside. It tells me nothing about you. It just tells me about the weather. But when I get to sit down and hear, hey, this is going on in my life, or this is happening in my family, man, there's a connection built there. But what I've also learned is I can't get to a 4 and 5 without having those ones and twos, which for me is hard because I find ones and twos awkward, annoying. I want to know you. I don't want to know the weather. But I've realized in order to build that connection with someone, I need to have those conversations.
Right.
And even like Kevin said, I need to remember what you say in those conversations.
Yeah.
Because, okay, now I know, you have this many siblings. Well, next time I talk to you, I can say, hey, how are your siblings? How's your oldest sister? How's that going?
Yeah.
And that bridges to the 4 or to the 5, and I think we don't value that enough.
Well, the reality is sometimes even our closest friends forget that stuff.
Yeah.
And so when someone who's still at a level 1 and 2 relationship remembers that, that's impressive in our world.
Right.
It impacts us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's so good. Tell us a little about your experience with the 4s and 5s.
4s and
Feelings and needs.
feelings and needs.
Feelings and needs.
I love the feels.
Hope.
Oh, yeah. Well,
You've made fun of me for this for like 2 months
That's true.
during our Love by Design series, and now I'm just saying, look how the turns have tabled.
can I say though, learn your love languages. One of my love languages is physical touch. I will say. So
Well, you do love the feels.
I do love
I'm
the
sorry.
feels.
No, cut this out. Cut this out. Stop it. Stop.
All
Zach,
right,
can
we're
you
going
edit
back
this
to
out?
I apparently see.
Oh, he's
actually,
not
can I
gonna
just
edit
say
this.
level Carrie and I, my wife
Oh,
and I,
gosh.
talk about how level 6 is juvenile potty humor. That's the level 6. That's the level 6 conversation. So after your needs are
Sorry, I
met,
just
you
clapped.
can then be silly and whatever. So, anyways, we're going to real levels
Yeah.
of deep. Level
Yes.
6. So that's a bonus round. We'll just
There we
stick
go.
with 4s and 5s.
right.
now.
I'll come
That's
back.
good. Thank
Potty humor like Zach's poop mug.
you. Okay.
We still got to give that away, by the way. We said that in episode 2 that we would
That's
give away his
terrible.
poop
Why would you
mug.
give away the poop mug? It's his favorite
I
mug. He
know.
uses it every day.
That is a limited edition mug.
It
Okay,
is.
we're having level 1s and
know.
2s again. All
Sorry.
right, keep going.
And 6.
And 6. But I would say within 4s and 5s, heart connection is important to me. I like being known. I like being seen. And if I can provide that for other people, man, that's impactful. I think in friendships, when you're able to allow someone to let down their wall and say, hey, I love you for all you are, man, it means something to them. I can remember being in college. I was discipling this guy. We would get lunch every week. Tons of 1s and 2s. We were just getting to know each other. Eventually, kind of had a couple 3s, and it started moving into 4s and 5s. And one night, he was sleeping on my futon in my room, pitch dark, completely quiet. And he looked at me and he said, hey, you're my best friend. And I was like, okay, cool. Thanks, Joseph. And he was like, no, you're my best friend. I've never met someone who will love me just for me and not require anything back from me. And it was a moment of like, dang, like that's impactful. And I don't think I even responded the right way. I was like, thanks, Joseph. Of course. It was 2:00 in the morning. I was tired.
Yeah, right.
But Joseph is still the person to this day that he just texted me last night of things that are happening in his life to say, hey, I want to celebrate this because God is doing something. And
Cool.
He's the person that I call to say, I want to celebrate this, but also this is what's going on. And I feel broken. I feel hurt. I feel pain. Can we talk about that? And that came out of a mutual 4 and 5 of, hey, I've let my walls down. You've let your walls down. And now we can enter into this mutual relationship where, we're sharing deep things, but we're also responding to those deep things,
Right.
That's really good. You said a phrase that I think is really important, and I actually love to have you like unpack that a little bit with in relationship to relationships and 4s and 5s.
Sure.
So you said, I want to be known. Isn't that? I think that's such a human need. When I got done speaking on Sunday, Carrie, who is my such a great resource for me to go back to and say, how was it?
Sure.
And she said, I would have had that, Kevin, that part of this is a way to be known and to help other people be known.
Sure.
Break that down, for people who may not get that. When you said that, I want to be known, what does that mean for you?
Sure. I think we live in a society, right, Kevin, you said it, where we think that social media says everything about us. It doesn't. It doesn't. My social media probably gives you more of the highlight reel of my life than the moments where I'm alone in my room, in my car, really processing what's happening in my life.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me, I think there's a part in everyone that wants someone to know what's going on in their heart, right? And not just someone. I think we even crave like is there a God who knows me, right? In our student ministry, Carolyn talked about the fact that we think of like, man, Kevin, I want to know what you had for breakfast. Like, I care about that. Do I? I don't know. But I want to know how your day went.
Right.
But God talks about knowing the hairs on our head. And it's like, Kevin, I don't care about how many hairs are on your head.
Right.
But
less and less.
well, same. But in that, it's the Lord saying, man, I care about every part of you.
Yeah.
I know every part of you. And I think it's so interesting that we have this desire to be known, yet we have this God who knows us.
We're already known.
Right. We're already known. Right. And I think so often, even in that, we go to other people to say, well, I want you to know me, yet we haven't taken time to say, man, I have a God who knows me, who knows all the disgusting parts of me, all the beautiful parts of me, and loves me. And I think even in that, when we have a healthy 4 and 5 relationship with the Lord, then we can have a healthy 4 and 5 relationship with others.
Yeah, that's good. And like that keyword, healthy levels 4s and 5s relationships, because we've all seen people that they have level 4s and 5s conversations, but they're not exactly healthy. Sometimes people use those, they share their feelings or their needs in an inappropriate way in order to hotwire connection just to feed their own brokenness.
Right.
And that's not a good place either.
Right.
People who just gush all over you, but you haven't gone through that progression of earning trust where risk is wise in that way.
Well, I think even in that, Kev, I think that's also where I've learned. I think in high school, Rob knows this about me. I think most people who know me would know I wear my heart on my sleeve. You can tell when I'm having a great day. You can tell when I'm having a terrible day.
By the way, none of us in Next Gen staff should really be poker players, because most of us in Next Gen staff wear our heart on our sleeve.
Yeah. Sure.
You don't usually have to ask us how we're doing, because we're wearing it. But keep going. That's right.
But I think in high school, I was so craving that feeling of I want to be known by people. I was just going out and telling everyone everything. And my core group of people was 15 people who had no clue how to deal with everything that was going on in my life.
Right.
And I was looking at them saying, well, why aren't you helping me? Why aren't you responding? And as I've gotten older and gotten, in some ways, maybe because I didn't know how to deal with those things and gotten hurt, I've realized that actually what I need is a core group of people around me. 3 or 4 people. In my case, I do have a larger group just because of college and our
Being here.
our community
Yeah.
here.
2
But even
different
in that,
places.
I have maybe 4 or 5 people from college and 4 or 5
Yeah.
people in our sanctuary community
Right.
that I go to say, hey, here's everything that I'm processing. And in some ways, I think I've been heard, I've been responded to, but even in that, I've been pointed back to Jesus.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not just okay, here's your therapy counseling session. It's them saying, hey, I love you, and I love you enough to say, have you sat with Jesus on this? Can I point you back to Jesus on this? And I've been hurt in that. And I was talking to you guys earlier. I had read this quote, and I'm just gonna read the end of it. But it says,
Who's it from?
this is from John Mark Comer, which we've talked a lot about.
Yeah.
Love that dude.
Yes. So this is the quote. It says, stay with your church, especially with your closest siblings and the family of God. Live in a thick web of interdependent relationships. Quietly defy the individualism that is wreaking havoc across the West. Surrender your autonomy to love. Place yourself in the constraint of community, for it is there we are set free. Give up your preferences for the sake of others. Enroll in the school of agape. When you fail a course, throw yourself upon God's mercy. Come back to the table, eat the bread, drink the wine, ingest the forgiving love of God. Repent again and again. Risk vulnerability. We will get hurt, and we will hurt in return. That's part of facing grace. Our greatest wounds come from relationships, but so does our deepest healing. The risk is worth it.
Wow.
And yes, some of my greatest wounds have come from people. But the Lord, being so gracious, has also used the thing that has hurt me to also bring me the most healing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can I actually speak to that
Yeah.
a little bit? I was listening, funny enough, to John Mark Comer, a sermon. He was actually quoting M. Scott Pack, who said, you can't have vulnerability without risk. You can't have community without vulnerability. And you can't have peace and ultimately satisfaction and enjoyment in life without community. So when, he kind of put it in his own words, that really connected with you. So there's that risk. And Kevin, you even mentioned earlier in this episode just how hey, trust is a foundation and currency for a relationship.
Yeah.
Right? So what I want to maybe just finish up with is maybe just sharing an experience of why risk? Why did you go into that place of vulnerability? Because what helped you get past that initial, I wasn't vulnerable before, now I'm risking it. In a healthy way, right? With people that you have established some type of trust with. I know that we're all communicators here.
Right.
That's what we do on the regular. And one of my favorite things I heard when it comes to preaching is that people will admire your strengths, but they'll connect with your weakness in communication. So what I try to do in every single one of my messages is I want to have at least one point in there where I share a weakness that I have or have had.
Yep.
And when people come up after service and they share with us, wow, you guys are just so real preachers. I haven't heard a real preacher like that. Really what they're saying is, I connect with your weakness.
Right.
What you were sharing makes sense to
vulnerability,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, wow, this actually, what you have gone through or what you are going through is something that I've experienced myself.
Sure.
But there is that, there's also limitations to a platform to speaking publicly. I'm not going to share, the deepest, darkest stuff with everybody because not everybody needs to know that.
Right.
And as you mentioned, there's a core group of people who I can trust and can risk.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to the original question.
Yeah.
What was the experience? What was your first time that you were like, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm just going to risk it and put myself out there and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that came in college. it was the first time I was in a Jesus-centered community, and in a lot of ways, I hold myself back. There's a side of Andres that many people don't see. There's a super silly side of me. Most people think of me as this like really serious person, but there is a silly side of me that is reserved only for a very core group of people. And why is that? Because man, that is like at my core, that's who I am, and I don't want to share that with everyone. I'm scared to share that with everyone. And as I dove deeper into relationships with my friends, I realized, hey, I have this desire to be known. So I started to little by little just let myself grow in my silliness.
Cool.
And what I learned in that was people weren't scared off. People didn't run away. People probably said, you're weird. But the response back was, but I'm weird too.
Yeah.
And it was almost this moment as I let my walls go down slowly, I started to see my friends' walls go down slowly. And it's one of those things where I now had friends who, I mean, if you heard our conversations, it'd be like you guys are idiots. You get to those sixes because there is this like, hey, I've risked it all. And what you've shown me is I love you regardless.
Yeah, cool.
So I'm able to let myself kind of go. And those are the places where I find rest, where I find peace. And even in that, right, I think thinking about that wall of conflict, the only reason why I could even get to that place is because we had hard conversations that in the moment felt like, man, I don't know if we can ever recover from this. But because of Jesus, we had something to rely back on, to rest on, to say, actually, if he's offering us grace, we need to offer each other grace. And the more that kind of that wall of conflict went down, the more I was actually to allow my wall down, to say, hey, here I am. How do you respond back to that? And I think that's what we crave. That's what we need. And I'm thankful for friends who have allowed me to let my wall down, but have also let their walls down in return.
It's good.
So good, man. Love it so much. I'm kind of putting you on the spot right now, but we got to close out this episode.
Sure.
Would you mind just blessing the people that are watching or listening with connection and deeper levels of communication? Sometimes what deeper levels of communication looks like for someone who's good at 4s and 5s is better 1s and 2s.
Yeah.
So will you just bless people with that?
Yeah.
Look at the camera.
Perfect. This camera.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Look at that face.
I bless you in the name of Jesus to have healthy relationships. To first have a healthy relationship with Jesus, with the Creator who knows you and loves you and desires to be with you. But I also bless you with vulnerability to let your walls down, to let people in, to know that it's risky. But on the other side of risk, man, there is blessing, there is hope, there is joy.
And healing.
Right.
Yeah.
And healing. So I bless you in the name of Jesus.
So good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. We'll see you next week.